Following the conclusion to the Pitt Season 2 Episode 7, the trailer for Episode 8 has just been released, and with all systems going down and them all being plunged back into the dark ages of VR in the 90s and the early 2000s, those clipboards and pens are gonna be at the ready. We can all say goodbye to Dr. Al-Hashimi's AI charting tool for the time being, because Noah Wiles is gonna be channeling his inner John Carter. With Dr. Robby quite literally throwing shade at everybody that he comes across, other than Mel, this next episode looks like the undermining that he experienced with Trent Norris going to Dr. Al-Hashimi is going to cause his mood to sink even more. It's the peak time of the 4th of July weekend, the systems are down, diverted patients are flooding in, and we've got a week to wait until we see what happens, so I thought I'd break down the trailer and also give my theories and predictions on what I think could happen. So let's get into it. Here is the Pitt Season 2 Episode 8 trailer explained and theories. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. So as the trailer opened up, the first thing that we saw pretty much defined the era of emergency room dramas of the late 90s and early 2000s, and that was the trusty whiteboard. Something that it seems like not many of the younger residents are going to be familiar with. Now, I love how it seems like following the news, there was one of these whiteboards just on standby and has been there ever since it was last used and has now got its moment to shine again. On the board, it looks like there's going to be the patient, the chief consultant, the MD, and any comments about why they're in there and the condition that they're in. The look on Joy's face, Dr. Javadi's face, Dr. Santos' face, and also Dr. Mohan's face spoke 1,000 words as they looked concerned on how they were going to keep up to date with everything that was going to be going on. It would be difficult enough to do on a normal shift, let alone a 4th of July holiday weekend where they're having an influx of patients coming in from another hospital because they're being held to ransom. The first line of dialogue was spoken by Dr. Robby, and he said, "As you can see, we're going to go old school, analog." Dr. Mohan said, "For how long?" And Dr. Robby responded and said, "Great question." This was then followed by Dr. Al-Hashimi finishing the sentence and saying that it could be up to 24 hours. Now, I feel like Dr. Robby's response of "great question" to Dr. Mohan almost stems from the fact that he doesn't actually have any idea how long this is going to be going on for because he wasn't consulted at all about what was going on, and he found out with the rest of the team. He's frustrated that he was left out of the conversation with Trent Norris because even though he's leaving, as we heard in the most recent episode when he was speaking with Dr. Santos, all the time that he's there, he's still the boss. At least that's how he views it. So with him being excluded, it's making him feel overlooked and like he's not really the boss anymore. The response that Ogilvie gave tied into the fact that the new generation of residents weren't used to working analog and were more used to digital, as he said, "This is the dark ages." Obviously, it was a complete and total exaggeration, but when technology has always been there to aid and assist, it's going to be completely different. With the phones not working, I do also wonder if there are any pages in a box somewhere. Maybe dig deep. The next piece of dialogue in the trailer had Dr. Javadi saying, "How much does this suck?" And Mel said, "I didn't think this day could get any worse." Mel has her deposition on the way in a couple of hours, so her mind was fixated on just getting through that. But with many other patients going through and also now the blackout, her stress levels are only going to get even higher. I'm presuming that what they're all doing there is doing a manual write-up of their patients and essentially providing an overview of their history, why they're in there and any updates throughout their time there, etc. One thing that we can also take away from this scene is that Dr. Abbot is going to be staying on the floor as he was still there, peering over his shoulder. They're going to need as many hands as they can due to the situation that they're in, and with a safe pair like Dr. Abbot's and with him always being willing to help, I think he'll stick around. This was followed by Dr. Langdon saying, "Today will be an adventure. Think of it like Back to the Future." He said this as a way of getting the team inspired and seeing it as like a taste of the past. However, as he said that, he knocked over the holder that had all of the clipboards in. This action felt symbolic of the fact that going back to the manual analog method was going to be something that would get in the way and be difficult, which is exactly what we're seeing. Dr. Mohan responded to him and said, "Or possibly the Titanic." With the Titanic sinking in the past, she saw going back to methods of the past as being something that could cause a catastrophe in the 24 hours that they're going to have to be like that. Dr. Robby was just standing there looking at the chaos on the floor as there was the most amount of paperwork that we've seen throughout the entirety of the show's history being passed around, and he said, "How are we going to get through this mess?" to Dana. Dana responded and said, "I was about to ask you." Now, with the situation that they're in, I imagine that there's going to be communication breakdowns and a lack of important information regarding patients getting shared. I do find it quite funny that in the most recent episode, as a joke, Dana said how she knew Florence Nightingale, the founder of modern nursing, and here Dana now was being plunged back into a time of nursing before technology was present. The next part of the trailer then had Ogilvie saying, "Where are you going?" as he was approaching a curtain where a patient would be. This was met with Dr. Javadi saying, "Did you sign up for the patient?" as Ogilvie was standing there with his clipboard. Dr. Javadi and Ogilvie were walking towards the same curtain, which looked like number 3, so I imagine Javadi might have gone through the right protocol in this analog system in order to be assigned with the patient that's there, and Ogilvie didn't, hence his whatever response and cold attitude. Ogilvie and Dr. Javadi have been at loggerheads for a while, trying to one-up each other, and we've seen Dr. Javadi trying to be swayed by her mother and father to get out of the ER, but it seems like that's where her heart is at the moment. So with Ogilvie wanting the same thing, I wonder if the permanent residency spot is something that they're both potentially going to be gunning for. The next part of the trailer was spoken by Dr. Abbot, who was taking control, and he said, "Nurses need to convert to a zone defense, north, central, south, and trauma." A zone defense is a system that gets set up to essentially smooth out patient flow. So with there being an influx of patients that nobody truly expected and them being overrun and the systems not quite being there to iron out what's going on, a manual zone defense is probably going to be ignited, which will help categorize patients and keep them moving through whilst not compromising the care that they're getting. The next shot in the trailer then had Dana going into what looked like some kind of refrigerator with Emma, and she said, "Are you effing kidding me?" Seeing as though Emma was there, I'm presuming that it had something to do with Ilana and the examination that she had. We know that she was feeling worried about going through with the examination, and she feared what would happen to the person that assaulted her because he was her friend, and she also feared being ostracized from her friendship group. So I wonder if something has happened to the swabs that were taken. Maybe she intervened or destroyed them because she didn't want the consequences to fall onto the person that was responsible or for anything to come back to her. If that is the case, it'll bring to light the harsh reality of the situation and sometimes the guilt that these people can feel despite not needing to feel any at all. After this, we saw Dr. Jefferson going up to Dr. Robby, and he said, "You managing this crisis okay?" And it was accompanied by a shot of him walking through the doctors and nurses, just looking at the network down screens and filling out their paperwork. The fact that he was in the middle of them made it feel like it's all just going to get a bit too much for him, and he might actually start to crack in this episode. The next shot that we had was of Robby approaching Dr. Al-Hashimi, and he said, "Next time maybe inform the department chair before it hits the fan," insinuating that he wanted to be made aware of it. This showed how Robby felt like he was undermined and underlooked in his position. He's been battling with the idea of leaving for a while, and even on his final day before his motorcycle trip on his sabbatical, he's struggling to hand that power over to somebody else. So by being looked over, it's made him feel worthless. Dr. Al-Hashimi responded and said, "IT called me up because I've trained in cyber attack prevention," and Dr. Robby sarcastically and frustratingly responded to her and said, "Then you can tell everybody what to do." This again showed the anger that he had and that the stress of having to manage the chaos was getting the better of him in that situation, so he might well put her under pressure and see exactly how she responds. However, I just think it's Robby throwing his toys out of the pram. Then with that, the trailer came to an end. I also think that outside of what we saw in the trailer, we're going to see Santos and the fact that she's feeling overworked to the point where there were scars on her, and that could begin to be addressed in a sensitive way. Plus, I also think that we could well find out more about Dr. Al-Hashimi's connection to the Baby Jane Doe and what it is that she specifically saw when out in the Middle East in the conflict zone that caused her to have that reaction when she first laid eyes on her. Until then, all we can do is theorize. So, there you have it, the Pitt Season 2 Episode 8 trailer explained. If you want to see more videos on the Pitt Season 2, then check the playlist below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. What do you think will happen next? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video, and I'll see you in the next one.